Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. If you believe that XRP price could hit double digits, maybe getting closer to $30, just know that you ain't crazy. You're not the only one that thinks that might happen in the future. I'm telling you, some of the most successful, intelligent people in finance and in crypto, just generally speaking, agree with you that there is that opportunity, that it actually could happen. And if anything, like some of you are just going to think that this is even conservative, and if you do, I actually don't blame you. But look at this headline. This is incredibly positive, obviously very bullish. Here it is from You Today. XRP price might skyrocket to $29.32, Bitwise says. Now, this is Bitwise, folks. This is not some sort of fly-by-night individual randomly posting things, typing on the Webernets with their fat little fingers. No, this is Bitwise. Did you know that they filed for an XRP ETF? Yeah, that's right. Take a look right here. And I covered this at the time. Here's the headline from October 2nd, 2024. From Blockworks, Bitwise files SEC paperwork to launch spot XRP ETF. They are serious about XRP. They understand that there's a very real chance it could be worth a fortune compared to where it is right now. And they got some funds. I don't know what the latest number is. This is what I could find just from a really quick Google search here, but this is from October 15th. So number presumably would be bigger than this because, excuse me, sorry, I don't know where that came from. But, you know, the market has gone up since the election, obviously a little bit back down. But here is a headline from their Bitwise Investments. October 15th last year, Bitwise crosses $5 billion in assets under management, up 400% in 2024. Then it appoints Louis Baruga as an advisor, which is not relevant to this video. But the $5 billion in assets under management, I highlight that to point out. They're talking about close to $30 per XRP sooner rather than later, even if it took a few years. That's a question mark. More on that in a second. But again, this is somebody worth listening to. Like, they're counting on this type of thing because they're servicing clients that want investment vehicles to allow for something like this because they actually believe it can happen. But before going any further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice. And you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. All right, so first of all, shout out and credit to my fellow XRP YouTuber, Crypto Eddie. She shared this yesterday, and that's the reason that I came across this right here and shared a link to the actual document highlighting these price targets. And I'll just tell you right here, we'll get into some of the specifics of this. Their bear case, they do have XRP at 13 cents. That's their bear case. That means everything's falling apart. And okay, and so what they're doing here is responsible. They're saying, hey, here's what we know and think and believe about XRP. Here are the metrics that would result in it being long-term viable. So here's worst case scenario, here's what's probably most reasonable, and here's best case scenario. That's effectively it. That's responsible. It doesn't mean they think that XRP is going to 13 cents rather. And I doubt they think that. I think they're just trying to cover the basis, right? So bear case, 13 cents, bull case, $12.68, and max case, $29.32. Now, to clarify, though, as far as that max case, they're not saying that's the highest it could ever reach. They're talking over a specific time period. And so here is their document where they explain all of what they think. It's a 33-page document. I haven't yet read the whole thing, but I read the relevant portion, and I'm going to highlight a couple key parts, which you're going to find absolutely fascinating here. But they titled this document, The Investment Case for XRP. And check this out. And so it's written by Matthew Hogan, Chief Investment Officer, and Ayush Tripathi, Research Analyst over at Bitwise. And let me get down to the relevant portion. It starts on page 26. And we'll read the negative part first. And again, I don't think that they believe this is going to happen. It's just it makes sense to not just post the potential problem. It's basically if everything falls apart. And what you're going to find as we go through this here is that their thesis, and they do cite some specifics, but I can just in a nutshell tell you what it is. It's my investment thesis. My investment thesis, and I believe this broadly to be true, certainly of XRP, but any coin, the entire crypto space. Utility matters and will win the day. Okay, there are tens of thousands of coins, okay, in existence today. I mean, setting aside all of the memes. If you talk about the memes, it gets into the millions. But if you're talking about other than that, there's literally tens of thousands of cryptocurrencies. It's not a fluke that XRP, for its entire existence, 12 years now, has always been in the top 10 coins by market cap. And that's just, by the way, despite the United States government attacking it via the SEC from the previous administration. Thankfully, that changed. But it's not a fluke. I mean, you're talking about the sum, knowledge, and beliefs of all humans speculating in crypto the world over. It's a truly global thing, and people still kept XRP in the top 10 coins by market cap. And so you can question why, and you could have a really big in-depth discussion about that. But suffice it to say, it absolutely has to do with utility. XRP is functionally useful. It does what Bitcoin was promised to do. Bitcoin failed. Bitcoin failed on the peer-to-peer cash system aspect of things, which is what Satoshi Nakamoto, creator of Bitcoin, originally envisioned it to be. It failed on that front. Now, Bitcoin's still here. It's number one in market cap, store of value, fine. But it failed as a peer-to-peer cash system on layer one. It just did. XRP didn't. As it turns out, people value that. And it turns out being one of the first cryptos ever created actually matters. And so the fact that XRP was yes, absolutely. Because it was one of the first movers, that's a huge aspect of this, and it just freaking works. Settlement so fast, it's effectively real-time, blocks settle in 3 to 5 seconds, and transactions so cheap, it's equivalent to fractions of a penny per transaction. That's incredible. And no central authority, it's truly decentralized, and businesses are doing stuff with it. So it's obvious, whatever you want to say the utility is, and that's a fun discussion, I'm just saying, utility matters and will win the day. And this is Bitwise acknowledging that. And so it's just a kind of a question. Does the utility go away? Because in the bear scenario, it would be the case that other coins are getting too much of a market share that like, seriously, XRP just falls apart effectively. Now, that doesn't make logical sense. I don't think that's remotely plausible. I'm not saying it's impossible. I don't think it's actually, I said that wrong. I don't think it's remotely probable. It's possible, not probable. That's my humble opinion here. Now, obviously, if Bitwise thought that was the probable outcome, they wouldn't be launching a product where like, well, let's do this, and then our investors, our clients are going to get burned, but hey, we can make a quick buck. No. They think this is going way, way, way higher, and that's why you'll see, like, if anything, maybe they're being conservative. And also, when you're talking about close to $30 per XRP, that's over a short term, over the short term, effectively. And so they're citing it going out into 2030. That could happen this market cycle for all I know. Maybe. I mean, if a crazy amount of money flows into the crypto asset class, starting with Bitcoin, yeah. I don't think the people that are saying $30 XRP this cycle, I don't know if they're right. I'm somewhat skeptical, but I'll still say, even though I'm more conservative when it comes to price expectations this cycle, it could happen. I'll still acknowledge that. So look at the bear scenario here. And I'm going to stay away from the actual math. It's on your screen if you want to look at it. But let me just read so you can see what their thinking is. And again, it really does just come to what I've been screaming ever since I jumped into crypto. Utility matters and will win the day. Meaning, any coin that is actually functionally useful to people and businesses, it's gonna be around for the long haul. And given that less than 1% of humans have ever held XRP, and about 5% of humans have ever held any crypto, and that's it. If we are right, and adoption continues, way more money flows in, and it becomes worth an absolute fortune compared to where we're at right now. That's the exciting part. And that's the cool thing. You really are early. You really did. If you're listening to this in 2025, you really did find out about XRP before almost every single human on the freaking planet. Congratulations. Sincerely, kudos to you. And so they wrote here, this is Bitwise, our bear case centers on XRP's critical dependence on institutional adoption within the context of banking sector dynamics. And I don't really need to read the math stuff. Let me just get to the nuts and bolts of it. To represent XRP. So, okay, for the bear scenario, XRP fails to capture meaningful share of its key target markets of payments and tokenization. And so, folks, that's when you're talking about payments and tokenization, as I've insisted, a primary reason XRP has thrived is because it's just good at payments. It just does what Bitcoin can't. It just does. And it turns out people like that. And people have rallied around it for that reason. And that's not the only reason. There's built-in, the world's first ever created a decentralized exchange, and you can tokenize assets and create markets on this distributed ledger technology. That's amazing, right? And so tokenization, I agree. That's a major thing. And thankfully, after all these years, what we believed was going to happen, real world assets actually matter being tokenized using DLT, it's here. It actually is. And that's a major narrative for this market cycle on top of that. And so they write here, institutional adoption lags, tokenization prospects on XRPL remain minimal, and stablecoin or other activities are overshadowed by rivals. And then they say this gives the following formula, and this they put some math there. I'm not going to read. It's on your screen. You can read it if you want to. I'm not a math dude anyway. My God, I always hated math. Numbers are hard. But they note that if we get that bear scenario, they wrote, this translates into XRP's price collapsing to 13 cents by 2030. Okay, so that's the bear scenario. That sounds pretty negative. We don't want that. I don't believe that they believe that's what's going to happen. You know, they're just covering their bases here, which is perfectly fine. But I will say, math aside, if it's clear that what XRP is great at, and they are kind of hitting the nail on the head, like you could branch this out more, but if you're talking about payments and tokenization, if XRP loses market share, which is to say other coins are found to be better for whatever reasons, and then there's less interest in XRP as a result. Yes, that's the argument I've been making. Its utility matters and will win the day. So if it's viewed that there's not sufficient utility from XRP in the XRP ledger, yeah, everything does fall apart. Forget 13 cents, it goes to zero. It goes to zero if that happens. But I don't believe that is what's going to happen, which is why I'm here. I believe it's very clear that adoption is going the correct way. I believe that this goes way, way, way higher as a result. And then they have their bull scenario. They write, our bull case represents a balanced scenario where XRP maintains its current trajectory with steady network growth. Here, XRP remains legal in major jurisdictions with minimal new headwinds thanks to partial resolution of the SEC lawsuit. Partnerships and onboarding of institutional players increase, but do not increase exponentially. Cross-border flows and stablecoin usage on XRPL rise in line with global digital asset trends. It remains a small player in payments and tokenization. We assign it an alpha of 0%. And so they're saying if that happens, they give their calculations as to why. That would place XRP at $12.70 by 2030. Now, just one more thing here. The reason XRP has an opportunity to run like this is because there is this base layer of actual utility and people value the attributes that XRP and the XRP ledger offer. I have to acknowledge, though, that when you get into euphoria mode in crazy markets, like we saw in 2017 and 2018, and like I believe will happen this market cycle, and you get these huge green candles, that's not specifically because of utility. That's because of people FOMOing it. And that's part of my investment strategy. I'm counting on that. But the reason that we could even see XRP in such a FOMO environment, which would be great for all of us that already hold it, is because of the utility. So the utility still matters. The fact that it has utility and has persisted, that is of paramount importance. Because it has that utility, that will then attract ultimately these moths to the light. Like that's what's going to happen in this crazy bull. That's the point. Because there's utility and people like you and I get that and we bought it for the utility, then because it's persisted for years and years and years, all the people that don't know a damn thing about investing and be like, oh, number go up, here's money. Like then they do that. So you could, as a result, see XRP fine, they wrote $12.70 by 2030. Without the utility increasing any further than where it's at today, you could see it at that price in a matter of months if some analysts are correct, but it wouldn't be because of utility. So what I'm saying is utility is at the core of why any cryptocurrency is going to appreciate in value and have long-term viability. But absolutely, I acknowledge that's not what caused those crazy moves to the upside. So you could have XRP at $12.70 maybe way before that. That could literally happen within months. So, and that's another thing now, Bitwise isn't going to talk about that. They're not going to word it that way. I'm just telling you my opinion, right? And then here's their max scenario, and this is the fun one. And this is something, who knows, like what if some analysts that think this is going to happen this cycle are actually correct? That would be wild. So anyway, the max scenario. The max scenario posits that XRP secures a modest but meaningful slice of the multi-trillion-dollar payments and tokenization use cases, creating significant fee and usage upside. Statista estimates that real-world asset tokenization could exceed $10.9 trillion by 2030. So even a small share of this tokenization shift, just 1% to 2%, can have an outsized effect on XRP's market cap, as XRP is geared toward transaction fees for issuing, trading, or redeeming these tokenized assets. The network would see greater on-ledger flows under this scenario. Issuers and participants using XRPL for token creation, custody, or settlement pay nominal fees in XRP. Each transaction burns a fraction of XRP, reducing supply over time, which could support higher valuations for the token. Okay, so as I've been noting, XRP is required for all of this tokenization, and RLUSD, which is a token on the XRP ledger. XRP is required for all of that occurring on the XRP ledger. That's great. That's going to attract more money flowing in. They'll be like, oh, wait a minute. So RLUSD, that stablecoin, it's broadly adopted, and it can't exist on the XRP ledger anyway without XRP? Huh. Well, I want to diversify into crypto. Let's put a significant portion into XRP and some other coins, but certainly XRP. That's the type of thinking. That's the type of thinking that's going to continue to propel XRP. Why wouldn't you do that? And so here's Bitwise effectively acknowledging the same thing that I've been saying for years. The utility itself matters, attracts more people. That will increase over a span of years and decades the demand for XRP specifically. That is exactly correct. Now, as far as XRP getting burnt for every transaction, yes, that's true. I don't think that's going to be I don't think it's meaningful. I don't think it's going to meaningfully matter ever in our lifetimes. I don't. There have been some people have done calculations showing that even if wildly adopted, it would take literally thousands of years for all of the XRP to be burnt via transaction. Like, and I'm talking if there's wild adoption, way beyond what they're talking about here. Because it's such a tiny amount of XRP that's burnt with every transaction, it's not that meaningful. It's the reason it happens is to prevent DDoS attacks, because it becomes like very costly to engage in that, and then the price will increase as you further attack the network, and then you still achieve nothing, so it's stupid. So it's a protection mechanism. But as far as it, making XRP more scarce, it does. And so I like that. Is it going to meaningfully matter? Not really. The nominal difference in how much XRP would otherwise exist, I mean, it's not very meaningful. That's just my opinion. But so it's still a good thing, but let's not overplay it. Some people overplay it. And that's the reason why. So anyway, where does XRP go under this scenario? Well, that's what they cited right here. That would place XRP under their max scenario. And again, this is just going out to 2030. So you can imagine another 10, 20, 30 years out, what that might mean if you continue to see adoption increases. But by 2030, they say it places XRP at roughly $29.30 by 2030. $29.30. Now, it could be the case that happens sooner than 2030, but they're doing their best to not come off as moon boys, and they're not. They're not just like wacky, wild internet moon boys. This is Bitwise with $5 billion in assets under management as of October. I think this is a pretty responsible approach and reasonable expectations here. And check out what else they wrote here. XRP's market capitalization ratio relative to Bitcoin currently stands at approximately 11%. In our max case scenario, assuming Bitcoin reaches $1 million per Bitcoin, which would be a $21 trillion market cap, XRP's projected $2.9 trillion market cap would correspond to a ratio of 13.81%, representing a moderate expansion in XRP's relative market share. It is important to note that this model does not hinge on XRP dominating the payment or tokenization markets, but rather capturing a meaningful non-zero share of those areas. And folks, XRP is not going to have 100% market share on any of these things. I've never believed that it would. I'm also not a maximalist. It doesn't need to have like a crazy huge percentage even. If it's functionally useful, just let it have its piece, and that's going to be more than enough to ensure XRP's long-term viability and result in it being worth way, way, way more in the future. So that's just fine. This is incredible. Like here. And this is in line with what my thinking has been the whole time I've been in crypto. This just makes sense. And so it's kind of, if anything, it's kind of validating to see Bitwise talk in pretty similar terms to what I've always believed makes rational sense here. But anyway, then they say it is also worth noting that these scenarios assume that Bitcoin continues on a bullish overall trajectory and that XRP maintains a tight relationship with the general growth of the Bitcoin market. Historically, XRP's beta to Bitcoin has varied significantly over time. And so, yeah, I think that's fair enough. Because if Bitcoin's not doing well, there's a good chance that means that something happened to crypto that's horrific, but I don't think that's the most probable thing. And I don't know what the price of XRP will be in the future, and maybe all of my hopes and dreams will be squandered and squashed, and XRP actually does go to zero. That's possible. I don't know, but I do not believe that's remotely probable. Look at the real world data. I think it goes way, way, way higher. You're going to have a multi-trillion-dollar market cap for XRP at some point. So to talk about close to $30 XRP, check back in 10 or 20 years. Let's do that. Let's do that. I'm willing to bet it's a bit higher than that. If it lasts that long and crypto really is wildly adopted to the degree that most of us firmly believe is the case, that's nothing. It can go way higher than that. And I do believe that. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I believe in that possibility. I 100% do. Which is why I've even said, I don't frequently even mention triple-digit XRP, but even I will acknowledge, if XRP is wildly adopted and if you give it enough time and crypto really is adopted that degree, yeah, that absolutely could happen. There's way more than enough money on the planet to get to a point where you have triple-digit XRP. I just don't believe it happens anytime soon. I really don't. I'd be happy to be proven wrong, but I do not believe it's going to happen anytime soon. I'm just saying that it's possible, but to me, that's sufficiently exciting. Because I don't know about you folks, but I don't need triple-digit XRP to be ridiculously thrilled with my profit. Just saying. And so anyway, all this to say, if you think XRP could be worth a fortune in the future, you ain't crazy. There's a lot of brilliant people out there with actual careers in finance who also believe that XRP actually could be worth a fortune compared to where it is right now. Yet you're not a crazy person. You're just early. Eventually, everybody will figure out and agree. I mean, assuming we continue to be correct, but look at the path we're on. Very obviously, people like these attributes. Like, the crypto's not going away, and XRP's, it's just been adopted because it's one of the first movers. It's functionally useful. Just let enough time pass. We'll just continue to get proven more and more and more. That's just the way it's unfolding. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say are right. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.